At exactly 6 a.m., the sound of metal snapping around my wrists echoed through my quiet driveway. Cold handcuffs. My own driveway. 3 men in cheap polyester uniforms shoved me against my truck like they owned the place. Their clip-on ties hung crooked, their shoes squeaked against the pavement, and the leader flashed a laminated badge that looked like it had been printed at a copy shop. "Hand over the keys," he barked. "This house is HOA property now. You owe $47,000. I stared at him, confused for half a second before the reality sank in. "I paid cash for this house," I said calmly, "and there's no HOA here." He smirked like he'd heard that excuse 100 times. They thought they'd found an easy target, just another suburban homeowner who would panic and hand over the money. What they didn't realize was that they had just tried to rob the wrong person. 6 months earlier, everything had seemed perfect. After 15 years working financial crimes in the FBI, I had finally transferred from the chaos of downtown investigations to a quieter suburban field office. My wife, Sarah, an ER nurse who had seen more trauma than anyone should, practically cried with relief when we found the house. Brand new construction in a peaceful development called Willowbrook Estates. The best part, no HOA, no monthly duas, no neighbors telling you what color your mailbox should be. Just a house we owned outright. We sold my grandmother's inherited farmland and paid for the place in full so we could live mortgage-free. The first 2 days felt like paradise. Our 8-year-old twins ran through empty rooms claiming bedrooms. Neighbors stopped by with cookies and offers to help unload boxes. It felt like we had finally escaped the noise and pressure of city life. Then on the 3rd day, the illusion shattered. I was unpacking tools in the garage when I heard heels clicking across the driveway. Slow, deliberate footsteps. Territorial. The woman who walked up introduced herself as Priscilla Blackthorne. Late 40s. Perfectly styled hair. Designer handbag. White BMW parked like a trophy at the curb. Her smile never reached her eyes. "Welcome to Willowbrook," she said, handing me a thick packet. "I'm a community standards coordinator. We need to discuss your compliance obligations." The packet was 47 pages long. HOA guidelines, monthly duas, resident initiation fees, property restrictions. I flipped through it slowly. "I think there's been a mistake," I said. "There's no HOA mentioned in my purchase documents." Her smile tightened. "Documents can change," she replied smoothly, "especially when new residents need to understand how real communities operate." Then she said something that immediately set off alarms in my head. "We know exactly who you are, agent." She had done her homework, and something about the whole situation felt wrong. Over the next 2 weeks, the violations started arriving. Unauthorized vehicle storage for parking my government sedan in my own driveway. Mailbox height violation. Una prueba de exterior color. Each citation threatened $500 per day in fines. The paperwork looked official at first glance, but something about it bothered me. The fonts, the seals, the glossy paper stock. 15 years of investigating fraud teaches you when something feels counterfeit. So I did what investigators do. I started digging. The company listed on the paperwork, Blackthorne Community Management LLC, had been created only 1 week after I moved in. Priscilla was the sole officer. No business history. No licenses. Property records showed something even worse. Her husband, Randolph, a local developer, still technically owned several unsold lots in the neighborhood. On paper, those lots had been sold to buyers who conveniently voted to create the HOA. Except the buyers didn't exist. Fake names, fake sales, fake votes. They had manufactured a homeowners association out of thin air. And then they started extorting the neighborhood. I began talking quietly with other residents. An elderly teacher named Dolores had paid thousands in fines for planting roses instead of approved shrubs. Bill, a Vietnam veteran across the street, had been fined nearly $8,000 for flying an American flag. A young couple with a toddler were staring at foreclosure because fake HOA liens had appeared on their property. This wasn't a power-hungry neighbor. This was organized fraud. Priscilla and her husband were filing fake violations, creating fake debts, placing fraudulent liens on homes, and then threatening foreclosure so they could buy properties for pennies at auction. They had already stolen hundreds of thousands of dollars, and they had chosen the wrong neighborhood to try it in. Instead of confronting them immediately, I started building a case. I recorded calls, collected documents, took screenshots of their online activity. Neighbors began documenting every interaction. The more evidence we gathered, the worse it got. Fake inspectors showed up pretending to be city workers. Their crew impersonated postal officials. They filed forged legal documents using a notary seal that belonged to someone who had died 2 years earlier. Then one day, the title office called me. The woman on the phone sounded baffled. "I've never seen anything like this," she said. When I arrived, she slid a document across the table. The original subdivision covenant. A single clause changed everything. No homeowners association could ever be created in Willowbrook Estates without unanimous consent from every homeowner. The neighborhood had been specifically designed to prohibit HOAs forever. Every fine, every lien, every threat, every single action Priscilla had taken was not just illegal. It was impossible under property law. At that moment, the strategy became obvious. Instead of arresting her immediately, we would let her commit one final crime in front of witnesses. Priscilla had already announced it herself. She planned to auction my house at the courthouse steps for unpaid HOA debt. So we prepared. Neighbors gathered evidence. Cameras were positioned. Federal agents blended into the crowd. Friday morning arrived. Priscilla stood behind an auction podium on the courthouse steps, announcing the foreclosure of my home. That's when I stepped forward. "Actually," I said calmly, holding up my credentials, "that house belongs to me." Then I showed the crowd the covenant banning any HOA in the neighborhood. The county clerk confirmed there was no legal foreclosure. Within seconds, federal agents surrounded her. Priscilla and Randolph were arrested on the spot. Guide fraud, mail fraud, impersonation of federal officials, racketeering. Their entire operation collapsed in front of cameras and witnesses. Months later, the case ended in federal court. Priscilla received 8 years in prison. Her husband received 5. Every asset they bought with stolen HOA money was seized and returned to the victims. The neighborhood finally returned to peace. Kids played outside again. Bill flew his flag without fear. Dolores planted as many roses as she wanted. But there's one part of this story that still bothers me. The document that destroyed their entire scheme had been sitting in public records the whole time. Anyone could have found it, but nobody checked, because the scammers relied on one simple truth. People see official-looking paperwork and assume it must be real. They count on fear. They count on people paying instead of asking questions. The real lesson wasn't that I worked for the FBI. It was that I refused to accept authority without proof. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is ask a simple question. Says who?